After just 6 months in the market, both current gen consoles have gone through some ups and downs. And today, I want to take a look at how Sony has handled the PlayStation 5's launch after 6 months of release. But more importantly, answer the very important question, if right now is the proper time to jump right in and pick up a PlayStation 5, or if you should just wait for the revision. And that's actually where I want to begin this conversation, talking about how just 6 months into the life cycle of an extremely hard to find and highly popular game system, Sony is already talking about having a revision in the works that will take advantage of a smaller nanometer die, presumably helping with performance, temperatures, power draw, and of course availability. And that's flat out infuriating to hear. Right away, a couple of narratives are set the second you hear about any sort of revision. One, that a performance boost, regardless of how soon it actually comes, is better, because systems are just eventually set out to be replaced no matter what. And you can't really tell people that who are still struggling to find a basic PlayStation 5 to actually go ahead and wait to purchase a revision that, is still in the works. That's just such a ridiculous concept to even consider. Secondly, you have people saying that, well, the system looks kind of funky, so if they do redesign it, I hope they come out with a PlayStation 5 Slim or something like that, which is, again, even if they're just going to change the look of it, you already told people that this was the system that you were going to be playing with for the next, couple of years. They called it the future of gaming, remember? But all of a sudden now they're talking about, nah, actually we're going to go another way. Companies like Sega did this in the past with the Sega CD, the Sega Saturn, and then eventually the Dreamcast. And, consumer confidence for that company just fell to the ground and no one believed in it. So, Sony is risking a lot by saying there's going to be a revision coming out within a year of the system's launch, which is just insane to even hear and consider so early on in the life cycle. The justification for PlayStation 5 games so far over the Xbox Series X is that you get tons of exclusives. Other than Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank, and Returnal, there's really nothing else noteworthy. Gran Turismo 7 was delayed to next year, Horizon 2 and God of War are still to be determined and likely to be delayed, or at the very least one of them will be, and we do know that right now Horizon 2 is also a PlayStation 4 game. We don't necessarily know about that God of War just yet, but the rumors around it are that it's kind of like Miles Morales, just an extension of the story, not necessarily a full-on sequel. Games like Sackboy and the aforementioned Miles Morales are also on PlayStation 4, so they're not necessarily current gen or quote-unquote next-gen exclusives. And then you have a slew of third-party games like Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, Guilty Gear Strive, Kena Bridge of Spirits, Project Athia, now known as Forspoken, and of course Final Fantasy XVI, which based on all reports is actually just a timed exclusive, and it is set to come on PC but not necessarily Xbox as of now. So there are some exclusives for sure, probably more named ones when in comparison to Xbox, and definitely some names out there that you can probably recognize, like God of War and Horizon, which Xbox doesn't seem to have that other than Halo. But if you start to compare origins and apples, it's just like, what preference do you choose over one another? Xbox will have their own exclusives, I covered that in the previous video, and Sony does have their own, but to say that the only real driving factor are the exclusives, I think is a little bit misguided. With that said, Jim Ryan is talking about making deals behind the scenes to secure even more exclusives than ever before. So he's projecting that PlayStation 5 will have more exclusives than even PlayStation 4, which was known to actually have quite a robust library of exclusives for that system. Something that definitely moved the needle for some folks was the talk of a faster instant load times, and seeing somewhat mixed bag results right after release for the PlayStation 5. Let's use the latest Resident Evil for example, which has 2 to 3 second load times on PlayStation 5, where on Series X it has like 7-second load times. And it honestly makes you wonder if this is a really make or break deal for some people, and for me personally, I don't think so. It's a nice bonus for sure, but I suppose if a game has better performance like it does on Xbox Series X and more stable frame rates, I'd definitely take that over any sort of 3 to 4 second load time difference. Now don't get me wrong, I'll state it again, instant quote unquote load times 2 to 3 seconds, just a black screen and you're right back into the game, that's great, that's awesome. But if you have shaky performance and it's not up to par with Series X, then probably I'd just take better performance overall. And I think most people would too as well, especially those PC snubs who are just all about the frame rates. The DualSense has also been coined as another bonus with haptic feedback and the sensation of a new take on traditional rumble, and it does have some degree of truth. However, it does feel like right now games are trying to justify it very hardly, so they overtune their games to unnatural levels, and feels like many shooters that stupidly lock your triggers when they're basically just trying to give you some sort of resistance. Then you have games like Destruction All-Stars that every little bump your controller's shaking non-stop. They certainly need to take a page out of Astro's Playroom that feels very natural as you play it, although it does have some moments that are a little bit over the top, but for the most part it feels very good to play, and it certainly shows what the controller can actually do. 3D audio is also supposed to be a big feature, but honestly I haven't really seen much of it, and this is with me finally adopting headsets into my day-to-day play, where games just don't basically stand out all that much. It feels like just more smoke and mirrors, and a lot of the PlayStation 5 features certainly feel that way. Although to be fair, first party games aren't necessarily rolling out right away, so maybe once they do start to roll out and we do begin to see more of these first party entries, we'll begin to see a little bit more of these features being robust and adapted into like better scenarios where they actually make sense to play with. Another thing that's definitely going a long way is the accompanying VR headset that's supposed to come out in the near future. But because we know so little about it, it's a little bit kind of unjustified to just have any sort of hype for VR, especially when the Oculus Quest 2 is out there and it's wireless. And that's definitely the thing that I feel like if you're gonna make a new VR helmet, regardless of the price value and regardless of what kind of audience you're actually chasing, you need to go wireless. That's kind of the option that just needs to be there by default. Now the Oculus Quest can still be strapped in with a cable and all of that, and it's not necessarily all that great. I feel like that was just something of a patch that they try to come up with afterwards. But if Sony is going to come out with a headset, it needs to be wireless, and from the looks of it, it's actually wired, so I'm not sure how that's actually going to play out. Then you also have the situation where PlayStation VR 1 people might feel burned that, you know, they invested all that money in that one setup and now they're actually being asked to purchase another one. You do have to upgrade just like the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, but man, again, having to invest all that money and all that time to set that up, I'm not necessarily sure if that many adopters, I believe 5 million of the PlayStation VR people adopted it right away. I'm not sure if PlayStation VR 2 is going to get those kind of numbers. We'll just have to wait and see. Also, it has to be more open. Like, they only ran the applications that Sony allowed. You need to have more applications like the Steam VR page or something like that available, so you can have access to more games that are just open environments, not necessarily just limited scope PlayStation VR type of experiences. And that's about all the positives I can really come up with, because the list of drawbacks is a rather long one, and I'd like to at least gloss over the more important ones because, man, there's just so many to hit. Basically, the control center is just not great, and we're talking about the HUD. It feels like they've revamped the HUD for no good reason, and the simple options like hold home button to shut down the system is just flat out missing. You have to tab to the side and stuff like that. It just feels unnatural, and something that even in the PlayStation 4, which wasn't a great HUD to begin with, they nailed that. It was just a very seamless transition to turn on, turn off, switch games and all of that, where in the PlayStation 5 people are still messing around with that HUD and they still can't figure it out. Another thing that feels something like an afterthought, and it definitely shouldn't be, is PlayStation Plus. And even PlayStation Now has become something of a bit of a meme, where they're trying to introduce video versions of both of these systems as well, which is great if you like Sony movies, but you're not going to replace Netflix anytime soon. So you're basically left with PlayStation Now, which is the streaming slash not really streaming, kind of like, I don't know what type of features does it actually try to introduce to people. And then you have PlayStation Plus, which is the only reason you would ever want to have this is because you want to play games online, and because they're forcing you to pay for online. You don't necessarily want to get it for the games that they're offering you, because if you have an Xbox, or you can get Xbox or at least Game Pass on PC, you definitely want to go for that instead. So it's not like PlayStation Plus is offering great games that you want to play day one or anything like that. So, man, it just feels like an afterthought all around. When speaking of features, the tabs also feel like basically they had like their moment in the sun with the Sockboy game, but then after that, nobody really embraced them. So 99% of games are basically using the tabs as trophies to display like what trophies you can earn. But like the idea of like, hey, I can jump into this level a little bit quicker or move from one area to another faster, like fast travel. That's what the tabs actually offer, those specific cars that are like in the desk, in the UI, and like no one's using them. So, you know, it's another one of those missed opportunities. Speaking of missed opportunities, basic things like 1440p support is just not available, which is why. Why is that a thing? And then you have the situation with 8K support, which is literally on the PlayStation 5 box, and that's not supported. So Sony is telling you, hey, buy this PlayStation 5, it supports 8K, it's in the box, it's right there as a main feature, and that main feature is missing. So, you know, you can make the argument that like, well, I don't have an 8K TV. That's great, and it's probably true, but you can't tell me that you go into a store, they sell you something that says that in the box, this is what it's supposed to do. You take it home and then it doesn't do the thing that it says it's supposed to do. Your argument can't be, well, like, I just don't have the TV to hook it up to. It should just do that, even if you don't have the TV to do so. Will you take advantage of it? That's on your end. That's not on their end. If they promise you a feature that's in the box, it should just do that because that's what they sold you. So giving that a pass is a little bit ridiculous to me. But again, people just keep giving Sony a pass. And speaking of giving them a pass, the external NVMe situations just can't even be accessed, you know, so your external memory on that alleged fast NVMe still can't be used. Another one of those is variable refresh rate not being available. I mean, why? I don't know. It's like, that's just such an important and basic feature that other consoles have. PS5 doesn't have it. No real good reason as to why that is. And then when you actually start to speak about the hardware itself, you know, the quality of the DualSense is a little bit all over the place. You have people reporting drift, other reporting that the triggers are breaking down and they're actually locking up. The controller is straight up dying outright on them. You know, it's just a bit of a mess. And then you have the system itself having so many software issues. The fan noises being, you know, ramping up, which, to give them some credit, they did realize that software situation might have been a little of a problem, so they decided to adjust it with like firmware updates and stuff like that. But like ultimately, you know, the system software has been a bit of a mess and they've had to clean it up, although not fast enough, obviously, because we're 6 months into it and people are still reporting like crash errors and stuff like that for games that are just shouldn't be crashing your system. They're PlayStation 4 games. Your system should not be like overheating or anything like that yet. You know, people are making reports about their system running hot and that the fans ramping up to ridiculous levels because the system is just having software issues. Not that the system can't handle these PlayStation 4 games, it's just clearly something is wrong that is reading information inaccurately, and Sony needs to get that fixed. And obviously the biggest drawback right now for PlayStation and Sony in general is just availability. They're basically shouting out there that, you know, hey, we got, you know, the fastest selling console, whatever, which is great, you know, but that means very little to anyone who actually wants to get their hands on one. Only dumb fanboys are getting excited over this stuff, which is just labels. But people who are like actually trying to get their hands on the system and know they can't get one because scalpers are buying them nonstop, you know, that's not helping their case. And then when there's talk of a revision, you know, or like a different version coming out soon, man, I can't imagine being in that situation. So ultimately, do I recommend the PlayStation 5 at this point in time? No, not yet. But this is the same thing I said about the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, with the understanding that although they do have Game Pass, if the library is appealing to you, you should probably look into that. But with the PlayStation 5, the situation is a little bit different. They have games that are coming. That's undoubtful. They definitely have exclusives, for sure. But is Ratchet & Clank a console seller to you? Do you need to be playing that right now, especially when there's talks of a revision? I don't necessarily know. Would you want to give $500 for a vanilla PlayStation 5 knowing that in a year or so they're going to have a better version out there? Probably not. So it's not like there's going to be a PlayStation 5 Pro or anything like that, but it's worth considering if the money investment right now is definitely worth for a vanilla PlayStation 5. I would just, if I was in that situation, I would definitely think it through. But hopefully this video wasn't too long. I try to keep it as short as possible, but those are my takes 6 months after the PlayStation 5. I definitely bought one on day one. I kind of regret it. I don't really use it as much. I only play a handful of games on it, and they're mostly PlayStation 4 games. That's just the sad reality of the situation. Will PlayStation 5 games come out in the future that make it work well? Absolutely, but that's not right now, so, we'll just have to wait and see. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!